Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
I have an author who is an extraordinary author because it doesn't just write books, he helps people. He's a psychologist in private practice. He's been doing this more than 20 years, but he specializes in something that people would appreciate a lot: grief, anxiety, trauma, and rebuilding relationships. This is really, it seems like that's what life's about nowadays. And so I want to welcome you to our show, Paul. It's Dr. Paul Coleman.
Thank you, Rita. I'm happy to be there.
I'm happy for you to be here also. And of course, he is actually calling from outside of New York City. But I was just thinking about this, and sometimes people have books that they write, and you can't really figure out what the name has to do. I just saw a play by Tennessee Williams. I think it was Tennessee Williams, The Night of the Lizard. Now I can't.
Iguana?
Yeah, the iguana. Thank you. That was good. I think. And that didn't make any sense until you saw the end of the show. But your book, Finding Peace When Your Heart Is in Pieces, one of my last guests, she was just on her way to clean out the garage and get rid of all the stuff that the ex just left. A lot of people need this, and your book is not only superb, but even the title just nails it.
Well, thank you very much. The title is always hard to come up with. I had numerous titles, and one of the earlier working titles was called Making Peace with Loss. But in the body of my book proposal, I had a headline that said, a section heading that said, Finding Peace in Your Heart When Your Heart Is in Pieces. And I always loved that. And my agent agreed, and we decided to make that the title. And then the publisher agreed. And then right before the book came out, the publisher said, we have to shorten the title.
Huh?
We can't fit it all. So instead of Finding Peace in Your Heart When Your Heart Is in Pieces, it became Finding Peace When Your Heart Is in Pieces. Still quite acceptable.
Oh, it's very good.
Shorter.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's very, very good. And I'm sure that when people come to talk with you and you know that they are suffering with grief, you probably tell them this, that we're going to help you find peace. We know your heart is in pieces, and let's just work this through, right?
Yes. Maybe not right away. It depends on what they're suffering through. And sometimes when it's really strong grief, anything that you say that sounds even positive or cheery, to them can sound very hollow. So you have to be very sensitive to that possibility, because many people, if they're grieving or if their life is upside down, maybe they have a major medical problem that they weren't expecting, or they lost their job, and very well-meaning people will tell them positive things, but it may not hit them as positive at that time. So I have to try to just listen to them and to find out from them, how would they like me to help? What kinds of things when they leave therapy or even leave the office that day would make them say, that was beneficial to me. That really helped. And very often, when we talk about it enough at length, the idea that they could find some kind of inner peace, even in the midst of pain or chaos, intrigues them. Because they don't think it's possible. Most people think you can't have peace until the war is over, until the battle is won, until the pain is gone. But we have to be able to find ways to find some kind of comfort or solace or peace, even when we're still in the middle of loss or pain.
Well, let me just say that, and I don't know her personally, but if I did, I would tell Hillary Clinton to go pay you a visit, because she must be hurting.
I'm sure she is. She actually doesn't live too far from me. Maybe about an hour, 45 minutes away. Yeah.
Well, I don't know her, so I can't advise her. But I know from reading your book, talking with you the few times we have, that, and knowing that what she must have gone through and is going through, I hope she is getting help, because that's a big, don't you think that's a very big, a big deal that she's been through?
I've thought that about just about every presidential candidate who loses the election. You wonder how because there's no second place trophy. There's no award for coming in second. So it must be very, very difficult because you're on the road for a year and a half or 2 years, or so you're earning money, trying to save money to fund your campaign, and you have hopes and ideals, and then you find that you're not going to have the opportunity to have those ideals put into action. It's got to be very challenging, very difficult.
And it was so close, but the worst thing is when someone says, "But I don't like her." I mean, it's like, wait a minute, this isn't a beauty contest, and it's not I don't know. It was, anyway, I won't waste any more time on this, but I was thinking about you, and you hold so much in your hands to help people. It's just, do you have a very full schedule? Can you always squeeze someone in?
I unfortunately have to turn down more people than I would like to, just because it's a private practice, so there's only so many hours in the day. And a lot of people prefer evening hours or late afternoon, and those are limited. So it's a little frustrating that way, but it is what it is. And sometimes people wait, and they'll say, all right, I'll just wait a month or so or whatever and try later. But it's just how it is.
When do you know that someone can make it now without you?
So again, when do I know that?
Yeah, when do you know that someone can make it now without you? One of your patients, that they don't have to come anymore.
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, a couple of things. Usually we try to have some kind of goals that we're aiming for. Sometimes people don't have a goal. They just say, I just need to sort out where I'm going in life, and I don't know exactly what that is. But a lot of people come in because, their marriage is not working, or they're having panic attacks, or they were in a car accident, or they suffered a major loss. And they know that they want to somehow feel better than they are, and they want to be able to start moving back into life again. So as soon as they start doing those things, we usually start seeing one another less often. And then we see how that goes. And sometimes if we find ourselves chatting about non-personal things, the state of the world or whatever, then those are signs that, maybe we're running out of things to really work on. So it's things like that.
I see. Well, of all is death the most serious of all the cases that you work on?
I think certainly a tragic loss can be, horrific, and I've had, unfortunately, many people who've had horrific losses, things that make the headlines in the newspaper kind of losses, and that's obviously horrific. Second would be, and maybe just as horrific, it depends on people who lived through major traumas, and maybe not just a single incident trauma, but maybe for years and years. People who were abused, for example, for many, many years. And that is also quite challenging, and there's a lot that goes on with people with those experiences that can be hard to hear for the average person, and it's an interesting, I think it's kind of a blessing for me to be able to sit with people and hear their story. It's painful at times, because you really feel for them. But you get to hear how people get through. You get to hear what's wrong with society and what might help to change it. But you know that you're helping in some small way, and that's always a comfort.
And how do you, as a professional, listening day after day and to some terrible things, how do you get to turn that off?
Well, I've been blessed with a wonderful wife and kids. My kids are all adults now. I'll tell you one thing that I'm doing for a lot of fun. I love the Beatles, always have, and I sing. And When my kids were little, I would play all the Beatles songs for them on my guitar.
Huh.
And now all my kids are either married or engaged. So for Christmas, they don't know this, but I've been going to a recording studio, and I've been recording Beatle love songs and trying to play them and sing them as closely as possible to the way the Beatles did it. Which has been so much fun for me. It's really a Christmas present to me because I've had a real hoot going into the studio and working on those things and seeing how it's really done. It's a complicated process, actually. You don't just sit down, sing, play the guitar, and that's it. So I'm really looking forward to having that project finished, and I just get to enjoy that, and it's a bit relaxing. I was in the studio last night from 7 p.m. to about midnight. So,
wow.
And that was working on just one song. So.
Oh, my. I knew you were special. I mean, you were just not any old psychologist. I knew there was something there. Wow. Well, Christmas morning is going to be one heck of a morning, unless you do this at night, New Year's Eve.
Christmas
Eve.
So.
Oh, and your wife hasn't heard. She knows you're doing this, but she hasn't heard anything.
She has not heard any of them. And I'm really excited about how they're coming out. So, it's a lot of fun.
Okay, well, I can definitely see where this would be a super. And, maybe that's something you probably, knowing you now a little bit, that you recommend things like this to your patients.
I recommend doing things that they've always enjoyed, that they've had a passion for, and making sure they find time for that. I like to do community theater when I can. It's a big investment of time, usually 2 or 3 months of rehearsals. But I recently was in a play in September. There was a comedy in this comedy. And I had a great time with that, too. And it'll probably be another year or year and a half before I get a chance to do another show. But it's really a lot of fun, and for me anyway. And I make sure that I give myself those things to have fun, because it can be draining having a job like the one I have.
So I can see, I don't think you should retire, but if you even do a semi-retirement of some sort, you would really jump right into this, it sounds like.
I think I would. I would probably always be working at least part-time, because I don't really want to give up what I do.
Sure.
But I would have a lot more time to do those kinds of fun things. I like to create things. Writing is a creative process. Singing music, writing music is creative. Being on stage is creative. And I've always done that ever since I was 3. So
amazing.
So it's just a continuation.
Were your parents musicians in any way?
They both played the piano, not like, concert pianists, but they did. But they never had one growing up. When I was heading off to graduate school, my brother and I went to a place that sold used pianos, and we bought a used piano for mostly my mother, because she could play by ear. So whenever she went to any place that had a piano, she would sit at it, and she would just play all the old songs. So we bought that for her. And then my dad had learned to play the piano as a child, but he could read music, so he started practicing. So they both enjoyed that. But my mom, many years ago, and also for Christmas, I bought her a ukulele, and I was probably 10. I remember the ukulele I bought her. When you're 10, you don't have a lot of money. I would save my lunch money.
Oh, you are.
I think it cost me $8 for this ukulele. And I swear she would, every night, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, she had that ukulele singing. She could do things with that ukulele.
No.
And she loved it. So it's kind of, there was always music in that sense. Yeah.
Oh, you are really special when you think back on that. And at that time, did you record anything that she did?
Well, we didn't have, the technology that we now do. So no, I don't have anything of my parents playing piano or playing the ukulele. I wish I did now, because they're both passed on. But it's a nice memory.
Yes, it's in your head.
And ironically, my youngest daughter a few years ago volunteered to teach English on a 2-square-mile island in the middle of the South Pacific for a year.
Oh, no kidding.
And she did. There was about 80 kids on this island, and she was the teacher. And they all had ukuleles. So she came back with a ukulele.
Oh, this is too funny.
I thought that was ironic. Yeah,
It is ironic.
Like, well, you can't get rid of these things. They just keep coming.
Oh my
heavens! So
that's the best story. I mean, that really is amazing. Oh my goodness! Of all places, right? Ukulele, because that's what they play. Sure, like in South Pacific. Remember?
Yeah. I know.
A ukulele, and so your mother was That's really special. So see, you have another life. I can see that.
Yeah, I do. I do, which everyone hopefully does. Unless your work is everything, but then you really better love it.
Yeah.
Because it's work too. You need other things. We all have different facets of ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to improve them or expand them or give them a test drive at least, because you don't know what you're capable of or how fun it will be. When you're doing community theater, for example, well, you get to meet lots of people because you're on stage with maybe anywhere from 3 to 25 other people, depending on the size of the show, that you never met before. And by the end of the show, they're all friends. And you do that enough times, you got about, I've probably done about 40 shows over the years. So I got a lot of friends in theater,
So you don't get stage fright. I sounds like you're just an old ham at this.
I never did. I never did. I don't know why. In fact, I always found it kind of exciting. So that's never been a problem, thank goodness. And I enjoy speaking in public. I enjoy singing in public. And I don't know why that is. I don't know what special quality that is, because it's probably the most common phobia of people is any sort of public presentation, speaking, or performing. Most people are nervous about that kind of thing.
I have a theory.
Yep.
My theory is because you were so loved, especially by your mother, that you could do anything or be anything, and that love carries you.
Well, that could very well be. They were always very supportive. My dad used to manage the local movie theater. This was long before malls had movie theaters. So your town had the theater, and it was an old-time Gothic theater, the high ceilings, and it had a stage. And so I got to see a lot of kids' shows for free as a kid. But I can remember specifically after one show, I was hanging out with my dad, whatever he was doing, what managers do, and the theater's empty. And he had me go up on stage, and it was around Christmas time, I think, and he had me sing a Christmas song. So I'm on stage singing a Christmas song just to him. But I remember that. I can see it in my mind. And I was probably 5 or 6.
Oh, my gosh.
And I just, so there's something about that process, theater. It's a wonderful world, theater. It really is. It's a lot of creative people and trying to become a character. I think it helps the fact that I'm a psychologist, because I understand people better. And so you try to become the actual character. So you sort of lose a little bit of yourself on stage, which is important if you want to be authentic. And so I think it all ties together.
It absolutely is. And so I want to remind everyone, we're not talking to an actor. We're talking to a psychologist who just has a lot of has a lot of talent. And he's a good guy, and you can hear that. So I can see why he'd be very successful, because he is so caring. And he not only a psychologist, but he's a great author. And he wrote a book called Finding Peace in Your Heart. Well, let's see, I'll give you the whole title. Finding Peace When Your Heart is in Pieces. It's a step-by-step guide to the other side of grief, loss, and pain. And it's Paul Coleman, Coleman, and you actually live in New York City, and I'm not quite sure how to pronounce, is it Wappinger Falls?
Yeah, I live about 60 miles from this city. It's Wappingers Falls. It's named after a Native American tribe. In the Hudson Valley, the Hudson River Valley of New York.
So do you get to go to Broadway a lot and see the shows?
We just went there a few weeks ago, and we saw 3 shows. It's so expensive these days.
I know.
So you have to be very careful, and you can go to GKTS and get discounts and things like that. But it's a lot of fun. So we do try to do that whenever we can.
Have you seen Hamilton?
No, that's like impossible to get tickets to.
Yeah.
But someday I will.
Right. I mean, isn't it amazing they were able to take something like that and make it into such a hit?
It's wonderful, isn't it? It tells you what the creative mind can do.
Yep.
Because who would thunk, on Alexander Hamilton?
Right.
It just doesn't ring like, oh yeah, that's going to be a great big hit in Broadway.
Right.
But there it is.
Without Andrew Lloyd Webber, even, right?
Without him, right. Lin-Manuel Miranda, he's now the big name. He's huge now. He wrote the book, he wrote the musical, he wrote the music.
Amazing.
He was the star actor, at least he was. He's not there now. So he gets a lot of royalties for every performance.
Right. Absolutely, it is amazing. So let's get back to some of your patients, because I know that we have a lot of older adults, and now it's the holiday coming up, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Do you practice differently during the holidays in the sense of what you say to people?
Well, I'm always aware that the holiday time, for some people it's exciting, for some people it's very sad, for some people it's stressful. So all of those things have to be, at least mentioned or brought up. I'll always ask people, so what are you doing for the holidays, or what are your thoughts about it? Because it could be any of those things, and we want to make sure we touch on it. But, the older we get, then there's always something that goes. There's always a letting go of something. You might have relocated, so you don't have your friends close by, or somebody passed away, or you have a new health challenge that you didn't have the year before. And so we tend to put these things, in our mind while we're going through these holidays. It can make the holidays sweeter, depending on it, or it can make them a little harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were just talking with another person who runs an addiction clinic, and always says that that's the time when people look at suicide, and I'm sure that that's something in your life, in your profession, that you're faced with, and so you're not able to dispense medication, are you? You're a psychologist, but you're not a psychiatrist.
That's correct. No, I don't prescribe medication.
And the people who you are dealing with, when you think they need prescription, I guess you just refer them to a psychiatrist or a doctor.
Yeah, I can tell people that, I think he would, be a good candidate for medication. I'm not a big pill pusher, per se. I don't automatically tell people, oh yes, unless they're just really suffering. And a lot of people don't want the pills right away, if possible. Pills have side effects. They can have side effects, and the side effects can make them depressed. Some of the antidepressants, the side effect is weight gain, which for a lot of people they don't want. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it is. So I'm glad you feel that way, because I have to assume that if someone doesn't have some sort of serious mental condition that's not just the sorrow or the depression, but something deeper. I mean, It's funny. I have a cousin, and she has a sister. Even though she's my cousin, I don't know her very well. And she's been very depressed to the point where they're actually using, what is it called for the brain? They do electroshock treatment.
Yeah.
Can you tell me
Wow.
a little bit about that? I don't really know that. I thought that was an ancient thing that people do.
They still use it.
What does that do?
I'm not 100% sure of what the actual physical process is, but it very much disrupts certain areas of the brain. And we reserve this type of treatment for the most severe depression when nothing else is working, because it can make you kind of forgetful. In some cases, I've known people that just find that their memory is disrupted. But in some cases, it's a lifesaver.
Yes, it sounds like it has been for her. Well, Paul, I have to just tell you how grateful I am for you taking the time and how much I learned about you. And I just have a smile on my face. And I want to wish you a very happy holiday. And I want to really thank you so much for all you do for everyone else. And I wish I were a fly on the wall Christmas morning when you give the gifts out.
Thank you, man. And my same wishes for you as well.
Yes, thank
I
you.
always enjoy speaking with you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.